So welcome everybody, thank you so much for tuning back in. Today we want to answer one simple question. Can you buy a cheap and actually decent 35mm lens for 20 quid? So if you are interested in this, stay tuned. So this is the Alfo Weitwinkel 35mm f2.8. I didn't pay money for this lens. I got it with another deal. It came to me by accident and therefore I thought I'd take a look and then sell it on. So I've already sold this lens and I sold it for 20 quid, so 20 euros. But the question remains, does 20 euros get you a nice lens? So let's firstly talk about Alfo. What's that? Quite an interesting story. There were trademarks back in the olden days which didn't produce their own goods. They just sold goods from other companies, and so you can get a lot of different lenses which are actually the same under different names. So there's Danubia, there's Beroflex, Soligor, there are quite a lot of them, and one of them is Alfo. But Alfo is something different as well. So there was a huge photo company in Germany called Ringfoto. They sold everything, and they are like a drugstore for photography. And they had their own trademark, and this trademark is Alfo. And they sold quite a lot of different products under this name, like films, photo equipment, photo albums and stuff like that, and also lenses, and they were all named Alfo. So Alfo is a shorted name, and it's a shorted German name, and it stands for Arbeitskreis leistungsfähiger Fotohändler. And it firstly was a company, and it was founded 1965 in Wiesbaden in Germany, and it later in 1969 was done under the name Ringfoto GmbH. Yes, so Ringfoto GmbH is still a company still around in Germany. So this lens should be around in quite a different forms and with quite a lot of different labelings. It is your typical 35mm from the day. If you had not the money or the willing to spend the money for the original 35mm for your camera. So it was cheap back in the day, and it is cheap today. But does mean cheap gets you bad optical quality? That is what we're trying to find out today. Let's first talk about the haptics of this lens. The haptics are really cheap, so you feel the quality of the lens. The lens is made out of metal, but there are quite a bit of problems with this lens. So the focusing ring of this lens does wobble a bit, and if you turn it, it feels too loose. It wobbles around, and at the different ends of the focusing ring, it feels quite different. So yeah, it's not nice to focus this lens. The aperture ring does the same thing, so you have 6 blades, and this lens does stop down, but it doesn't feel great. It has clicks, but the aperture ring as well does wobble in its place. So the entire lens feels quite loose and not nice to use. So we now know that they cheaped out on the outside and on the mechanics of the lens. But does this mean you get bad optics? That's what we want to find out in the next step. So let's talk about the optical qualities of this lens. I have taken a number of test shots. The lighting conditions were quite pleasant for the lens, so it was a bit of an overcast day, which means you don't get a lot of flares, which is one of the best scenarios for a lens. So let's have a look at a few pictures. If you see this picture right here of this nice flower, don't know the name in English, so don't care. Let's have a look at the sharpness of the lens. If we zoom to 100% right here in the center, we can see that there is sharpness. We are right now at f2.8 and at 100 ISO. So best scenarios, and this is the sharpness right there. I'm not that happy with it, and you can see if you get out of the shadows, out of the sharpness, then you get a bit of ghosting right here, right there. By the way, I don't have sharpening and everything else done. Those are the raw files right out of camera. So this is what you get from this lens. But this looks okay-ish in my opinion. But what I can see in the next picture right now quite well is the rendering of the background. This is quite an interesting one. So you can see that it melted the background away, but, and this is a big but, it did something which I didn't expect from it. If you have hard lines of contrast in the picture, those stay. So right here there is a window at the building, you can see those lines quite well. And if we go in, back in the full picture, you can see the house just ghosted away, but you can see it quite well. And that is a characteristic of for a lens of which the design is from the 40s to 50s and not from the 80s to 90s. So this lens doesn't render the background nicely. Another thing that you can see right here is it bubbles. And this is not a harsh bubble, but you will see in other pictures that it bubbles really hard. So let's have a look at a different picture. At this one right here. Again, I'm not happy with the background separation and the background rendering, but let's have a look at the harsh contrasting edge right here. And you can see right here and right here that we have chromatic aberration, even in the center. Sharpness, really good, not that unhappy in the center, but chromatic aberrations, quite a lot of them. Let's have a look at another picture. If you have a look at this one, have a look at the rendering here right in the edge. Maybe let's go in 50%. So this right here is really an old school look. So this lens design is quite old and it was reused for this lens. I'm not sure which lens this came from. Yeah, but it's not from the 80s and not from the 90s. It's 60s or before. Let's have a look at this picture. This picture shows one thing quite well, and it's the fall off in the back from the bokeh into the background. So if we look right here in the center, there is sharpness and there is good sharpness. And now if we go right over here, it gets less and it gets less and it gets less. But the main structures still are visible, which is something that you really do not want from a lens. You want those fall-offs to be a lot smoother. Yeah, so this is quite an old school look. But if you like this, it's a cheap way to go into a 35mm lens. This one as well, and here we can see the bubbling, and it's a lot of bubbling. So as I've already told you, there was no harsh light, no harsh backlighting whatsoever. It was completely clouded. And have a look at what we got up here. This is a lot of bubbling. Many people like this look. I, for 35mm, really don't. What I do like at this picture is the rendering of the sharpness. Have a look at that. And here, right here, when there is a big fall off, so when there is a huge distance between the main subject and the background, then you get smooth bokeh, and this is really nice. This is really, really nice. I do like it a lot in this picture. What I don't like is for this picture is the bubbling. But if you do like it, it may be your cup of tea, so you can live and you can handle it. That's okay. This, by the way, was done at f2.8, so a bit stubbed down. But this is the only thing this lens can do nicely. It has good center sharpness, and if you have a big distance between your background and your main subject, then you get nicely blurred backgrounds with bubbles. So this, in my opinion, is the sweet spot for this lens. But now let's come to the real deal where this lens falls apart, and that is if you take a subject and you want it to be completely sharp from edge to edge. So let's have a look in the center. This is okay. This is really okay. I do like it. Color rendition, not the nicest, but it's okay. And now let's go to the side here. Have a look at the chromatic aberration right here and right here. It's purple fringing all over the place, and we are soft, really soft, and then it gets worse, and it gets worse. And have a look at the purple fringing right here, and up at the here at the ghosting right here. This is really awful for an edge. Those edges should be nearly as sharp and not as dark. It should be looking like that, but they really doesn't. This is the main problem with this lens. So at infinity you can't use it. You really can't. Have a look at this. This is really, really a problem. So last but not least, let's have a look at what this lens can do nicely. I do like this picture. It gives a little vibe. It's special. It's something different. Sharpness is good right here in the center, and the bubbling is also good in this picture. So it's nice, but it's special. It's a special thing. You don't want to have it in every picture. So this lens can do nice picture work. Contrast is good from the get-go without a lens hood, and but the sharpness is to the edges isn't good. Background separation is really something you have to like, but that is subjective. Yeah, so I do like this picture, I really do. But it is a special lens which you can't use for a lot of situations. In this form I do like it. At infinity I really don't. And I think the image quality at infinity is appalling. So if you have a nearby subject, this lens is great. And for the price as well. This is a really good performer for 20 quid, but just at this kind of a scenario. So thank you so much for tuning back in, and have a good one. Bye.